Eagerly awaited, hotly anticipated. These are all words used to describe and to talk about this, the new Perodua Ativa. This is not just a new Perodua. This talks about the transformation of Perodua. This car has so many new things for us to talk about. It has a new platform, a new powertrain, new safety technology and new convenience features that have never been seen before, not just on a Perodua, but at this price point. The Ativa signifies a whole new Perodua, and so today we're going to talk about it. My name is Aiman Abdullah, this is Malaysian Motoring, and this is our review of the new Perodua Ativa. The thing about the Ativa is that people think that this is a rebadge, which it most certainly is not. The Ativa project was developed alongside the Toyota Race and Daihatsu Rocky. They are three siblings, as it were, three peas in a pod. So despite that, Perodua has done quite a bit to make sure that this looks like a proper Perodua product. You have a much larger trapezoidal grille, which was first seen on the Perodua Axia style. You have these fog lights around, which look very similar to what we've seen on the Perodua Aros, and even these L-shaped little design details here remind us of what we've seen from the Perodua Bezza. These headlights are full LED units with sequential turning indicators, a first of its kind for a Perodua. And in fact, if we're not mistaken, the next car up with this sort of feature is the Volkswagen Passat, which is what, 180,000 bucks? So that's pretty cool. These headlights are even more intelligent though. They have adaptive driving beam, which actually changes the beam of the headlights in order not to blind other road users while maintaining high beam as much as possible, which is incredible for a car at this price point. Moving down the side, you have 17-inch alloy wheels wrapped in Bridgestone Turanza tires. Now, a lot has been said about these tires. They are a little bit expensive. It's very impressive that Perodua has been able to package this as standard, but the size is a little weird because they are a little bit skinny. So finding replacements for these are not going to be that simple. But going down the side, talking about the design language, there is a lot to talk about. For starters, the fenders front and rear are very prominent. They're very muscular and they aid making the car look a little bit more stable, a little bit more sort of on the road. Going down the side, you see that there are very prominent wheel arch liners and a little bit of body cladding, again to emphasize the activeness of this car. You get contrasting door mirror caps, chrome door handles on this AV model. You also get blacked out A-pillars in order to give it this floating roof design. The AV model is available with a two-tone color scheme at an additional cost, but even like this, it still looks pretty damn good. Going down the back, you have what I can only describe as a very Perodua treatment. If you go all the way around, you can see that it looks very similar to what we've seen in other Perodua products before. The tail lights, for example, are now linked together via this black and chrome garnish. And it does look, from a distance, a little bit like a Myvi, just a little bit neater. You have another skid plate down here, or skid plate, like what we've seen in the front. You have more of these L-shaped design features, again to make it look similar to other Perodua products, but the number plate is placed down low, giving it this nice big tailgate for reasons I can't quite comprehend. It's worth noting though, while we're back here, that there is this weird T badge. Now, the Ativa comes as standard with a 1-litre 3-cylinder turbocharged engine, so this is supposed to stand for turbo. But given the fact that there is only one engine option, why is that there? It could perhaps hint to the fact that this car may get other engine options in the future, or that future Peroduas may offer different engine options, and so there may be T for turbo, H for hybrid, and heaven knows where else that might go. While we're back here, let's talk about the boot. You will discover there is 369 litres of boot space back here, with the boot floor set to its lowest possible position. 369 litres is actually bigger than what you get in the Proton X50, which is largely considered to be a larger car. Weirdly though, this is better packaged. Now there is also a tonneau cover that fits here, which is a soft tonneau cover, which you can actually fold and put underneath the boot floor. A lot of its competitors cannot really claim that. But talking about the boot again, it's a large flat space with the boot set to its highest position. You get almost no load lip, and you can fold the rear seats 60-40 for maximum boot capacity. As a result, the Ativa is an incredibly practical machine, despite the fact that it's relatively small, which means that this car's use cases are a lot wider than one may initially assume. Anyway, enough about the exterior. Let's talk about what's going on inside. Now, on the inside of the Ativa, the changes continue. We have never seen a cabin from Perodua that looks so complex and mature and confident even. There are so many things in here to talk about that it makes my head spin, but we're going to try and make sense of it now. So sitting here, the first thing that strikes you is the fact that you now have two screens in here. Not one, two. You have a 9-inch infotainment system, which is standard on the H and AV models, and you also get a multi-info display, which is what Perodua calls it, but it's basically a digital instrument cluster, which is incredibly customizable. You get all your driver's information there. You can change the layout, you can change the design. Each of them comes with its own welcome and exit design thingy. It's cool as balls, this car. But right in front of you, of course, is the steering wheel. This is, again, a new steering wheel for Perodua, which has more buttons and features on it because this car now has more features for you to control. And therefore, you have all the settings that you need here. You have the buttons on one side to handle the multi-info display. You have the buttons on the other side to handle the cruise control, the lane keep assist, even the power button in order to get the car in a rowdier mood, as it were, should you need to suddenly overtake, for example. But sitting here, immediately the driving position is already quite good. These seats are surprisingly comfortable for a Perodua, something that I have complained about in the past. And there's plenty of side support. There's even a decent amount of lumbar. Again, very strange for a Perodua, a sign of good things to come. But overall, this cabin, like I said, looks great. Of course, materials are a bit nasty, but that's what you'd expect from a car at this price point. You can't really complain. I certainly wouldn't. Now, going down, you get the typical Perodua digital air conditioning controls. Now, it's not climate control, it's not single zone climate control, it's just air conditioning controls. It's just buttons and a screen in place of knobs. You either like it or you don't. I don't mind it so much, but you also get the memory settings, which allows you to have up to 2 different climate settings for, let's say, a hot day or a cool day, for example. You get a lower, shorter gear selector on this raised plinth, which I just think looks really cool. And even on the side of the plinth, there are these little pockets where you can hide stuff. You can actually fit a phone, that was my cable, you can actually fit a phone down here and hide it pretty well. Your lock and unlock buttons are in the middle, which are a bit strange because they're very low, but these are some things that you will get used to very quickly. You now get the return of the cup holder by the air vents, which was first popularized in the 2nd generation Myvi, and so that actually keeps your drinks cool, or it blocks your air conditioning, depending on how you want to look at things. You still get a manual handbrake, which some people like because they're idiots. You also have a large glove box, which is big enough to fit the service booklet. And this is the quick reference guide. It seems that the service booklet is either not available with this car, but the owner's manual is now fully digital. So you no longer have to carry around the owner's manual in your car. Talking about the seats again, in this AV model, they are full leather. They're dual tone with red bits and a perforated black leather center. You also get this weird sort of microfiber material down the sides, which look great. I mean, they look really great. Like, I don't know how all of this is available in the car. It's only about 72 grand. You also get a leather wrapped steering wheel with contrast stitching, which is nice. And for the H and AV models, you also get contrasting red bits like down here and by the door grab. And it's all just very cool and funky. Talking about practical bits, you can fit 2 bottles down in the doors. You have a little tray here where you can put your phone, for example. You have 2 USB ports. You have a 12-volt socket as well as an HDMI input in order for you to manipulate stuff on the screen. And overall, it looks pretty good. If I have to have one complaint though, it is the fact that the steering wheel is only tilt adjustable and not reach adjustable, which means that if I were seated here, I'd want the steering wheel about here, but I can't really do that, which means I have to adjust the seat in which way in order to make this work, which is slightly unfortunate because we do feel that Perodua could have moved forward and given us something a bit more sophisticated, but Now in the back, which I'm not going to move to because I can't be bothered, the rear seat space is actually not that bad. Seated behind myself, I have plenty of legroom and plenty of headroom, and I do represent the national average, which means most people are going to be quite comfortable back there. There are two ISOFIX mounts in order for you to fit child seats, and the doors open quite large so that it's pretty easy for you to fit a child seat back there. You have a two-stage recline for the seats so that you can get slightly more comfortable over longer distances, but the seat bases are a little bit flat, which means that you lack a little bit of lateral support, which could be important if the driver gets a little bit too carried away, which they could in a car like this. It's worth noting that there are only two USB ports back there. There are no aircon vents. Some people are going to take issue with that. Admittedly, it would have been nice if there were rear aircon vents, but to be honest, if you just set these, the way they're supposed to, you can get plenty of air conditioning back there and the car cools relatively quickly. Helping that, of course, is the fact the AV model also comes as standard with Lumar tint, which means that it helps to cut down the amount of heat that comes into the car so your air conditioning doesn't have to work that hard. Now, enough about this interior. You've seen plenty of photos, you know exactly what it looks like, you know exactly what's in here. What you want to know is how it drives, which we will get to right now. So, driving the Perodua Ativa. We're certainly very excited to be one of the very first media members to be driving the Ativa. This is an eagerly anticipated vehicle, not just for us, but for the general public. From what we know, at launch, this car received well over its expected booking numbers, and mercifully, Perodua already had several thousand already waiting for delivery upon launch. So, again, let's go back to the car for a second. So, as I said earlier, this is a compact SUV, and so compact SUVs are predominantly designed for use in town. So, in that sense, looking at this as a town car, from where I'm sitting, it certainly feels like a very adept one. For starters, this car is quite boxy, and being boxy means it's very easy for you to place it both in parking spaces as well as in traffic. And thanks to the nippy and responsive powertrain, it means that you can nip in and out of gaps in traffic very, very easily. But the thing about this car is its breadth of ability goes so far beyond town capabilities, and that has a lot to do with the powertrain. So under the bonnet is a first for Perodua. It's a 1-litre 3-cylinder turbocharged engine which produces 98 PS and 140 Newton meters of torque. That is paired to a Perodua first D-CVT automatic gearbox, or a dual CVT, which apparently marries the typical pulley system that you get with CVT gearboxes as well as some physical gears, and as a result it means that the car is a lot more responsive and it allows the car to cruise at a lower RPM when you're driving at higher speed. Now, the D-CVT is paired to a standard run-of-the-mill torque converter, which means you will not get the usual sort of delays that are very synonymous with Proton's CVT gearboxes. Anyway, so because of this powertrain, it means that in town there's certainly more than enough poke. The pairing of a small turbocharged engine with the D-CVT means that you get a lot of that torque very easily. So it's very accessible for use most of the time, and as a result this car feels nice and nippy. But it's when you're out on the motorway that this car really begins to deliver. That's when it shows its true breadth of ability. Because the thing about Peroduas is that they're very good in town, but the moment you start to drive them over longer distances, the whole facade sort of drops a little bit. The engines have to work really hard because they're quite small, and in order to sustain high speed you have to keep them revving really high, and that noise gets back into the cabin, and then it just sort of makes the whole thing rather uncomfortable. So the Ativa, on the other hand, suffers from none of those issues because this engine is so torquey. So you have 140 Newton meters, like I mentioned earlier, but thanks to D-CVT you get a lot of access to that torque very early on. So even when you're driving at higher speed, like for example I'm doing about 90 kilometers an hour now, and the car is doing about 1,002 that's 1,700 RPM, which is relatively low. At 110 kilometers an hour, you can expect to see the car ticking over just over 2,000 RPM, which means that the engine doesn't have to work that hard. And because the engine isn't working that hard, it means that very little intrusion comes into the cabin. Now, talking about intrusion, I know that many of you are asking a million and one questions about the fact that this is a 3-cylinder engine. Now, a lot of your concerns are misplaced. The 3-cylinder doesn't really rattle unless you're, foot to the floor, or when you're starting from a standstill. Only then do you feel a tiny little bit of rattle for about maybe a second. But once the car gets up to speed, once the engine gets up to speed, it's very, very smooth. So you barely feel that this is a 3-cylinder at all. It responds really well, it's very punchy, very torquey, and pretty refined. Of course, it's not quite as isolated from the cabin as the 1.5 litre 3-cylinder from the Proton X50, but then again, the X50 is a much more expensive car, and it is technically one segment above, and as a result, a lot more money and a lot more time was spent in order to isolate that engine. But then again, for 90% of users, they're going to be perfectly happy with the level of refinement offered by the Perodua Ativa. It certainly feels like a much more mature product in here compared to other Perodua products in the past. The Myvi, for example, could be considered as Perodua's flagship because that's the model that they spend the most amount of R&D on most of the time because it's such an important model to them. But even the Myvi pales in comparison to this car. The Myvi is a great town car, but this is a great everything car. And I think that sort of covers a lot of what I want to say about this, because on the motorway, it does high-speed cruising pretty well. The adaptive cruise control system, of course, makes things better, but generally just driving at motorway speeds, about 110 kilometers an hour, it's surprisingly refined, it's surprisingly quiet, and the best part is it's also incredibly frugal thanks to the fact that there's only a 1 litre 3-cylinder under the bonnet. It is great. This car is genuinely fantastic. If I were to gripe, perhaps it would have been nicer if there was maybe a little bit more poke in this engine. For those who drive over longer distances, it's always nice to have a little bit more torque and a little bit more power available. 98 PS is broadly what you used to get out of the 1.5 litre VVT-i engines from Perodua. It would have been nicer to see this car pack a little bit more punch. But there's that. There's also the fact that, like any Perodua, the electronic power steering on this car is very good in town, but pretty dead on the motorway. You get absolutely no communication and no feedback through the steering wheel, and as a result, you may tend to overestimate this car's capabilities through corners. It's worth noting that while this car does run on 17-inch alloy wheels, the tire size is relatively narrow, notably narrow, in fact, and as a result, you don't actually get a lot of lateral grip in this car. It's very easy to lose grip in this car, so you just have to be a bit more careful when you're going through corners. My suggestion is drive it like a Perodua, so scrub the speed before you hit the corners and then power out through the straights. In the Ativa, powering out is a whole lot of fun. So, in conclusion, what can we say about this car? Well, the thing about the Ativa is that it's a lot more than just one model. In my line of work, it's very easy for you to isolate a vehicle and say, oh yeah, it does this good, it does that good, and so on and so forth. But the Ativa is a much more complex product in that sense, because it's more than just one product. The Ativa signifies a maturity to Perodua. It's part of their latest transformational efforts from becoming a purveyor of cheap cars to a purveyor of high-value vehicles. And as a result, the Ativa certainly puts forward its value proposition very, very strongly. For just under 72,000 ringgit for the model that I'm driving, you get a hell of a lot. Oh crap, I didn't even talk about the safety features. Yes, talking about what you get, you can't deny the fact that this car comes with a fully comprehensive list of active safety features. You have adaptive cruise control, you have lane centering assist, you have lane departure warning, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, pedal miss operation alert, AEB, and all of that, all available in a car that is, again, less than 72,000 ringgit. How Perodua has managed this is absolutely beyond me, but it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Perodua wants to be a purveyor of high value vehicles, and that is exactly what this car is. The value proposition in this car is frankly unbeatable. 1 litre 3-cylinder great ADAS technology. I mean, what more do you want? On top of that, you have a car that is, while diminutive in size, packs quite a lot of punch. There is a whole lot of space in here, about as much space, if not slightly more than what you get in a Myvi, and you even get more boot space in this than you get in a Proton X50, for heaven's sake. So really, what more would you want? I think only the fussiest of customers would complain about this car, especially given the price point. When you understand that this is a car that is affordable for most people, you begin to realize just how wonderful and just how amazing this is as a feat of engineering and a feat of product planning. Would I recommend the Perodua Ativa? Absolutely. There really isn't another compact SUV within this segment that offers so much for so little. Really, truly, the Ativa is a miracle. I have no idea how Perodua manages to eke out any sort of profit from this car. Frankly, if they told me they were losing money on every car, I'd believe them. It'd be a very bad business model, but I would believe them. Because this car is truly fantastic. So fantastic, in fact, we have big news that we will be sharing with you in due course. We are very excited about this announcement, and so we certainly hope that you will stay tuned to the channel and our social media channels as well, so that you will be among the first to know when we make this very special, very big announcement. It has been months in the workings, and now it's finally about to pay off, and we're so excited to share this all with you. So, Ativa? Hell yes. So much so, you'll see what we get up to very soon. In any case, that's been our review of the new Perodua Ativa. I certainly hope that all of you have been keeping well and keeping safe. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the links to our socials are in the description below. Again, certainly hope you guys have been staying safe and staying healthy. So guys, take care. We'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Jangan bodoh. Which I cannot unlock because my other presenter has the key. Talk amongst yourselves. Again. Nope. There we go.